So, did you know that early onset Alzheimer's is on the rise? Good morning. My name is Aldan Joseph, and I'm a junior presenting from San Antonio, Texas. My research project is a comprehensive overview of Alzheimer's disease, its possible risk factors, and possible therapies. So, to specify that, I looked at early onset Alzheimer's disease, which occurs in individuals younger than the age of 65. I looked at major depressive disorder as a possible risk factor for Alzheimer's. And after evaluating the importance of serotonin, I looked at dietary regimens and SSRIs as possible treatments. So what is Alzheimer's? Alzheimer's disease is a neurodegenerative disease characterized by the degradation of an individual's social behavior, memory, and cognition. And typically, the area of the brain impacted is the temporal lobe, specifically the hippocampus, which is pertinent for memory. So its mechanism of action stems around two major protein buildups, one being amyloid beta and the other tau. So outside the membrane of a neuron, we have amyloid precursor protein, or APP, which is a fundamental protein for neural growth and maturation. So inconsistencies regarding the breakdown of APP actually leads to amyloid beta proteins. And over time, these proteins clump together and form amyloid beta plaques. Now, these plaques disrupt neuron-to-neuron signaling, which actually leads to neural degradation. And inside the neuron, inside the microtubules of a neuron, we have tau proteins, which help maintain the integrity of the neural structure. So when an extracellular kinase comes in with the extra phosphate, tau proteins change shape in a hyperphosphorylated state and actually abandon the microtubules, which leaves them compromised, which also leads to neural degradation. Now, these tau proteins go on to form tau tangles, also known as neurofibrillary tangles. So both of these protein buildups actually lead to atrophy in the gray matter of the brain, which is important for memory and cognition. So when looking at patterns of epidemiology, we see that there has been a rise of early onset cases. Now, typically, Alzheimer's disease is only something to worry about in the age ranges of 65 and higher. But this straightforward graph shows that in data from 2013 to 2017, the increase of early onset cases. So this got me thinking, if there was another disease that predisposed individuals to early onsets of Alzheimer's. And I came across an interesting statistic that 40% of people with Alzheimer's disease suffer from significant depression. So I chose to look at major depressive disorder. So MDD, or clinical depression, plagues about 21 million adults worldwide. Its mechanism of action isn't very well known, as a wide variety of biological, genetic, and environmental factors can cause this disease. But what's really interesting about this disease is the correlation it has to Alzheimer's disease. So this diagram shows protein buildup in an individual who has late life depression. Now, this is actually very similar to what an Alzheimer's brain would look like. There's also patterns of epidemiology. So as you can see, from 2015 to 2020, there's been a huge rise of younger and younger individuals with this disease. So does MDD predispose individuals to Alzheimer's disease? I'll come to that conclusion later. So what's interesting about both these diseases is that patients who have both of them have really low serotonin levels. Now, serotonin is known as the happy hormone, and it's associated with mood regulation, sleep regulation, and memory regulation. But where does serotonin actually come from? So serotonin comes from the essential amino acid tryptophan. So this diagram shows how tryptophan is converted into 5-hydroxytryptamine, which is serotonin. So it's natural to think that if we eat more foods with tryptophan, we'll get more serotonin. So the question is, can diets be correlated with therapeutic effects concerning Alzheimer's and MDD? So I chose to look at two diets in particular, Paleolithic diets and Mediterranean diets. And both those diets actually showed fewer depressive signs and fewer signs of Alzheimer's disease. So, and a very interesting point is that 90 to 95% of serotonin is actually produced in the gut. So serotonin travels from the gut to the bloodstream and to the brain, and that's its pathway. So once it travels to the brain, it goes to presynaptic neurons. So the presynaptic neurons release serotonin in the neural synapse, and then it's absorbed by postsynaptic neurons. But some serotonin undergoes what's called reuptake and it does not get released. So when looking at drug therapy for treating Alzheimer's, I looked into the antidepressant selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, also known as SSRIs. Now, these SSRIs essentially prohibit the reuptake of serotonin. So this allows more serotonin to be present in the neural synapse, which can be absorbed postsynaptically. So can SSRIs be applied to Alzheimer's or early onset Alzheimer's? So SSRIs are antidepressants, which are typically administered for patients with MDD. But SSRIs actually showed positive results exhibiting the capacity to enhance memory cognition. And they also mitigated certain toxicities of mutant APP, amyloid beta, and tau protein agglomerations. So what is the takeaway? Early onset Alzheimer's disease is a problem that needs to be addressed. Major depressive disorder can predispose individuals to early onset Alzheimer's as it jumpstarts the process of neural decay. Now, there are two methods towards treating this. One is a change in lifestyle, dietary regimens, focusing on diets with high levels of tryptophan can lead to a higher increase of serotonin production and a better memory function for individuals. And the second method is the administering of drugs. SSRIs, which are antidepressants, have been shown, as I said before, to have positive results when looking at memory. So there are some limitations in my experiment, and the main limitation comes from the application of SSRIs. So the experiments I looked at were mouse models with clinically induced depression. So there's actually not many human trials with statistically significant results that say that SSRIs are a valid treatment for Alzheimer's disease. Now, an overdose of SSRIs can cause what's called serotonin syndrome, which is actually really harmful to the serotogenic pathway. So next steps, things I found interesting and would be willing to research later: CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing, AI in Alzheimer's detection, and this new Alzheimer's medication that has been groundbreaking. These are some of my references, and I want to give a special thank you to my mentor, Colwyn, and my mom, who is my #1 supporter and #1 fan. Thank you.
Thank you, Aldan. That was so fascinating and really important research. So we have a question here. Someone is very curious to know, what are the next steps now that you finish your project? Do you plan to continue to build upon it or pivot to in another direction?
Yeah. So I found this project very fascinating. So my project was basically a comprehensive overview. It wasn't as experimental as some of the other projects here. So what I'm planning to do this summer is actually go into research with a mentor at a clinical lab so we could do clinical studies over Alzheimer's research.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you get connected to the mentor?
Oh, I had to cold email a lot of people for that opportunity.
That's great initiative. That's awesome. I'm excited to hopefully we can see what comes up.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you.
The last question we have here is, what advice would you give another student just starting this exact research topic as you?
The same research topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so what advice I would give is focus on one thing. There were so many aspects of this research project, and I chose to do a comprehensive overview, but some people may want to focus on the experimental side. So it's really important to focus on one specific topic, and after a problem is posed, focus on how to solve that very specific problem within the disease.
That's great advice. Thank you. Thank you, Aldan, and thank you for this great presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you.